You ever watch your mother's hands start shaking so hard she can barely hold the eviction notice? 40 years of sweat and backyard barbecue memories threatened by a woman in a red suit who decided my parents were just too old to fight back. Yeah, that happened. I remember standing there in the doorway, watching my mom clutch that letter like it might bite her, and thinking, "Lady, you have no idea what you've just started." No. Let me give you a little context before you think, this is just another sad story about an old couple getting run over by the system. The HOA president, Karen Dalton, yes, really her name was Karen. She didn't know three things. 1, my dad documents. Everything. 2, her private emails. Not so private. And 3, the man in the gray suit standing quietly behind my parents. Well, that wasn't just their son. That was me. And let's just say I didn't spend my life fighting injustice for nothing. Now, my folks, they're the sort of people who believe that if you did things right, played by the rules, and kept your head down, life would eventually give you a little peace. My mom, Rosalind, was still out in the yard every Sunday, kneeling by her rose bushes, snipping the dead heads off with those old silver pruning shears, 40 years of tending those flowers. My dad, Nolan, always reading something, glasses slipping down his nose, porch swing, creaking under him, that white house behind them like a gentle old friend. You ever feel a place wrap around your bones like it's part of you? That was 247 Maple Street. But that afternoon the air changed. The sound of Karen's high heels coming up the sidewalk cut right through everything. She stopped at the edge of the yard like she owned the deed, clipboard in hand, smile sharp as a paper cut. "Mrs. Brennan," she said, in that way people do when they're pretending to be nice but really think you're dirt on their shoe, "your rose bushes are violating regulation 12.3.5. They're 3 inches over the property line. My mom just blinked. She'd planted those roses 20 years ago, and suddenly they're illegal." Karen didn't care. She checked her clipboard, started rattling off fines for repairs. We never did all, while my dad tried to keep his voice steady, because righteous anger, especially for a black man in America, is a dangerous thing to show. But here's where the story starts to bend. What Karen didn't know was that their doorbell camera was running the whole time, caught everything. Even caught a younger guy, Trent, from the board creeping up earlier, with a paint can dabbing the railing for evidence, snapping photos and driving off. Manufacturing violations. Creating proof out of thin air because they thought my folks were too old and tired to fight. What they didn't count on was that my dad would see all that on playback, save it to 3 different drives, back it up to the cloud, and sit down at the kitchen table that night with a fire in his eyes. Thing is, this wasn't their first rodeo. My dad's been a historian his whole life. Dates, names, documents all lined up like toy soldiers. My mom, a nurse, worked double shifts, kept every pay stub, every receipt, every letter. Their kitchen wall was a timeline. Her graduation, his master's degree, my high school picture, my law degree, even my federal appointment, Judge Fletcher Brennan right there in the family photo. The pride in this house, it ran deep, but so did humility. And that, more than anything, is what made the next few weeks hurt so much. The harassment started: slow, phony citations for noise when the AC wasn't even running, unapproved repairs, weed letters about flower beds. My mom weeded herself. Social media whispers about certain neighbors lowering property values. And every time my folks got quieter, more careful. My mom stopped tending her garden, afraid even to step outside. My dad started to shrink, 15 pounds gone in 3 weeks, face hollow, hands shaking. Neighbors crossed the street, people they'd helped for decades, wouldn't meet their eyes. Isolation, does more damage than any fine. Then came the fraud accusation. I still hear my dad's voice when he called me at 2 a.m., rough and scared in a way I'd never heard. They're saying we forged the purchase documents. They're saying we're frauds. I don't know what to do. Let me tell you, when your own father, who taught you to stand up, says he doesn't know what to do, that's when you go home. You put every case, every meeting, every important DC appointment on hold, and you go fight for the people who built you. The HOA tried to drown us in paperwork, change the rules 17 times. in 6 months. Surgical strikes, paint color, setbacks, noise, all targeting 3 families. All minorities. All on the lots a developer wanted for new townhomes. If you're seeing the pattern, congratulations, you're smarter than most of my parents' neighbors. My dad mapped out every citation, every new rule, and found the pattern. My mom's voice got hard. You're not crazy. You're not imagining things. You're being hunted. Enter Duncan the Twist. Former board member, not a saint, but with a conscience. Shows up looking over his shoulder, hands my dad a USB stick. Internal emails. Karen's working with a developer, wants you gone for a new project. I approved some of those changes before I realized what was happening. I'm sorry. Document everything. Don't trust the process is rigged. He vanished like a ghost, but what he left behind gold. Emails laying it all out, harassment, fraud, deliberate targeting. Even the line, make it look organic. Last thing we need is a discrimination lawsuit. She knew. Now my mom's health started cracking, stress, high blood pressure, fear eating at her. The place that was her sanctuary turned into a bunker. Dad tried to protect her, but you can only shield someone so long when the whole world turns mean. Eventually they broke. They called me again, not as a judge, but as their son. We need you, Fletch. Please come home. The hearing was set public, of course, because nothing fuels an HOA like an audience. I showed up in a gray suit and watched Karen try to bulldoze through the presentation photos with signatures circled in red, evidence that would make anyone look guilty if you squinted hard enough. But this was my turn. Excuse me, I said, walking right up to the projector. I'd like to present our side. Every document, every video, every chart showing the rules changed to target only minority homes, the staged violations, the emails to the developer, slide after slide, their faces turning wider and wider. And then I said it. I'm not just their son. I'm Federal Judge Fletcher Brennan, and I've been building a case against this board since the moment you started targeting my parents. You could hear the room suck in its breath. The FBI agents I'd called in showed up right on cue. We have a warrant to seize all HOA records. You should have seen Karen's face. Suddenly all those private emails weren't so private. The aggressive board member tried to bolt, didn't even make it halfway to the door. The room exploded. Neighbors yelling some filming, others just sitting there stunned, realizing they'd been part of something ugly. And yeah, justice came. Federal charges, fraud, discrimination, embezzlement, elder abuse. Karen got 8 years and $500,000 in restitution, stripped of every license. The accountant who cooked the books, 4 years in fines. The board member who did the late-night harassment, 2 years and a long public reckoning. The development company, dead project, criminal charges pending. The HOA court-appointed receivers, every rule reviewed, restitution for families pushed out. But here's the part nobody puts in the headlines. Healing takes time. My mom got a letter from Karen, 4 pages of apologies and rationalizations. I convinced myself you were obstacles, not people. My mom forgave her for the personal harm, but not the pattern, not the system that lets people justify cruelty if it's dressed up in procedure. And you know what? That's fair. The case became precedent. Law schools taught it how to document, how to fight. The neighborhood changed slowly. New board, new rules, families returned, old friendships mended, some not. My dad started giving talks about documentation, about standing up. The garden bloomed again. The new sign on the porch, Brennan Home Est. 1985 says more than any court ruling. One spring, sitting on the porch with my daughter Cora, watching my mom tend her roses, I told her why this house was special. Because we fought for it. Because Grandma and Grandpa didn't give up, even when people wanted them gone. My dad said justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just refusing to move from your house. And I realized that's the inheritance learning, that home is more than a building, that justice is built, not given. So let me leave you with this. Justice isn't a spectator sport. It's built by people who refuse to look away, who document, who stand up, who come home when home needs defending. You ever find yourself on the receiving end of that kind of power? Don't quit. Document everything. Find your people. Make noise. Because sometimes when you push hard enough, the system actually works. Now tell me, where do you draw the line between following rules and standing up for what's right? What would you have done if it was your family, your home on the line? Drop your thoughts, share your stories below, because justice starts with speaking up. And maybe the next time someone tries to steal a home, it'll be your voice that tips the scales.